Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Zimbabwe is a failed state. And the number one reason why we are a failed state is that we have failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections in 45 years of our independence in this day and age. Many people have played their part in establishing this de facto one-party dictatorship that has ruled the country these last 45 years. The war veterans, the freedom fighters, played a pivotal role in the fight for independence. But it is also equally true that Robert Mugabe, Mnangagwa have exploited, bribed them to do the party's dirty business of helping it to establish and retain the de facto one-party state. This is a historic fact. It is most disheartening when people want to distort history to fit their own agenda. Here is one of the war veterans talking about the dangers of dictatorship.
It should be there forever in a dictator state. And they lead this country the Nicolai way in this century. Zimbabwe, with its all brains, this is a country with a high literacy rate. And as such, we cannot be fooled by clueless, arrogant, and corrupt leadership. We can't. And this must be resisted with the full force. This must be resisted with the people's power. And there is no one who is going to defeat or conquer people's power. You can fool yourselves. The world has been full of dictators who thought they were invincible. The Emperor Bokassa from Central African Republic.
Sorry, I seem to have lost the sound there.
The day he is out, they will start to celebrate his departure. I thank you.
What we cannot deny is the pivotal role the war veterans. I'm not saying him or so-and-so, but war veterans in general. They've played in the imposition of the de facto one-party state that has ruled Zimbabwe since 1980. Here is Emmerson Mnangagwa boasting about the role he played in the 2008 election coup. And he was able to do it with the help of the army, the police, the CIO, the prison service, and war veterans. In this video, we'll hear one of the war veteran leader at the time, Javlani Svanda, boasting of what he was going to do.
2008 patakaita ma-elections pakaposa papinda Tsvangirai ndandiri election agent ya president ma-results abuda tiri party headquarters. Vamtasa vangwari secretary vedu administration. Vamtasa mulipi yafona. Ndiri kwarusapi. Koma kwenda kwarusapi seka marizauti achibuda kudai. Vanga aiwa zvako izvo Mnangagwa ndezvo zvako enda kumusha. Office vanga vabisa zvinhu zvavo zvose. Watofunga kuti zani yadini yaparara. President ofona zvakamira sei? Kati ndomamira zvakaita takatodini katida sei manje mama ndikati abvudzai baba nditaurira navo baba gadzirai politburo cabinet musarangarira zvimwe zvinhu gadzirai chi cabinet asi nangoda kuti muzive kuti 2008 maresults abuda vamutasa vakatiza.
As a country we face a generational transition. Vana vesa vari kuma below 35 they are crying out for help. The country is in a mess. Arusurufaro. We know we are inheriting a mess. We know this country has been left with nothing.
I'm assuring you that starting from tomorrow, you'll see a different nation from what you have seen or read on the news about these results and everything. Where we are going ahead there, the situation will be very different. What we said to our people, they could not see with their own eyes. We are going to act as we see it fit. We are prepared to go the whole distance.
Zimbabwe had its worst election-related violence in 2008. Millions were internally displaced. Hundreds of thousands were raped, beaten, and over 500 were murdered in cold blood to secure Zanu PF as de facto one-party state. I think it is respectful that the war veterans should admit their role in it, and that dictators, and we have had Mugabe and now Mnangagwa, the war veterans played a major role in imposing those dictators on the nation. More recently, 2023, Mnangagwa insisted that the elections were free, fair, and credible. And yet we all know that they were not.
Vana vakatuka Zanu PF kana ini ndonyanyisa kufara kuita zvakanaka. Ukavona vavengi vako vachikurumbidza unenge uchikanganisa. Ukavona vachiti Zanu PF yakaipa farai. You are doing correct things for your country. Hongu takaita maelections edu kuna vamwe vaitaura zvisina musoro zvikanzi maelections anofamba zvakanaka ndezvavo.
So to the comrade, I would happily submit that if you are going to talk about dictatorship, let's be honest here. Can you vouch for yourself and many of your fellow comrades or veterans and for VP Chiwenga that he is not corrupt, that he has never rigged elections, and more significantly, that he will never be Zimbabwe's next dictator. I think those who live in glass houses, you should not throw stones. The challenge before this nation is that we should be looking at how are we going to end this failed political system, the dictatorship. This is why it is important that we should focus, all of us, all veterans, ordinary Zimbabweans, opposition supporters, and even Zanu PF supporters, because this is in the national interest, that we implement the democratic reforms to dismantle the Zanu PF dictatorship. That is the way forward. The last thing we want is find ourselves campaigning and fighting to stop Mnangagwa amending the constitution, and then succeeding, and then Chiwenga or somebody else is the Zanu PF candidate, and we are back to square one. The elections are rigged again, and we end up with yet another dictator. That is what we must fight to avoid here. After 45 years of rigged elections, the most important lesson we should have learned by now is that the system, the dictatorship, has failed. We need to fight to restore the freedoms and human rights of all the citizens, including the right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country. This is more than just a right. It is the very essence of good governance. What we all need in Zimbabwe desperately, after 45 years of Zanu PF tyrannical rule, is to end the case of rigged elections and give ourselves the blessing of good governance. No one has the divine right to rule. That is at the heart of democratic elections. If Mnangagwa is Zanu PF candidate for Zanu PF, assuming he had no impediment of the two-term limit, and people of Zimbabwe voted for him in a free, fair, and credible election, it will only be because they believe he's the best candidate, the best person to rule the country at the time. That is the spirit we should have. If Chiwenga is the leader of Zanu PF and he wins the majority vote in a free, fair, and credible election, then he must be allowed to govern. He has the mandate of the people. The same applies to Chamisa or anybody else. That is what democracy is all about. Let the people decide. After 45 years of being stuck with a dictatorship, first Robert Mugabe, and now Mnangagwa, the last thing we want is to find ourselves with yet another dictator. That is what we are talking about here. Thank you very much, those of you who were able to join. I hope you'll be able to do it again in future. Have a good evening.